The candlelight flickers in a silent chamber. A woman kneels, her heart pounding, as the heavy boots of guards echo down the corridor. Her crime is not theft. It is not murder. It is love. And in the world of kings and courts, love, when it crossed the wrong lines, could be treated as treason. History often paints royal mistresses in silk and jewels, basking in privilege. But behind the gilded curtains, these women walked a razor's edge. In the dangerous theater of medieval and early modern courts, where power was absolute and suspicion never slept, even a whispered rumor could become a death sentence. This is the untold story of royal mistresses on trial, women whose passion, ambition, or simple misfortune became weapons against them. It is a history not of romance, but of peril, politics, and punishment. Royal mistresses were not mere lovers. They were often pawns and power brokers in a game far larger than themselves. In France, England, and across Europe, kings rarely concealed their affairs. But when politics shifted, these relationships became liabilities. Take the court of England's Edward III. His mistress, Alice Perris, rose from obscurity to wield enormous influence. She adorned herself in gold-threaded gowns, walked boldly beside the aging king, and even dared to speak for him in Parliament. But when Edward died, Alice was stripped of her wealth, accused of corruption, and exiled. Her intimacy with the crown, once her greatest asset, became her downfall. Such women rarely faced love trials for romance alone. More often, they were accused of espionage, corruption, or treason, charges that masked deeper fears. That a woman close to the king might bend his will, sell his secrets, or even plot against the state. In 15th century France, Agnes Sorel was the first woman officially recognized as a royal mistress. She dazzled the court of Charles VII with beauty so radiant chroniclers claimed, no mortal man could gaze at her without marvel. She wore daring gowns cut low at the bodice, scandalizing noblewomen. But Agnes' true power lay not in her fashion. It was in her access to the king. Enemies whispered she meddled in state affairs. Foreign envoys blamed her for royal decisions. And when she died suddenly at 28, suspicion swirled like storm clouds. Was it dysentery or poison? The king himself ordered an inquiry. Some said it was political revenge. Others hinted it was personal. Though she was never formally tried, Agnes became a symbol. Her story revealed how quickly adoration could turn to hatred when a woman near the throne appeared too bold, too visible, or too influential. To be loved by a king was dangerous. To be envied by his court was fatal. No story better embodies love becoming treason than Anne Boleyn's. In Tudor England, and captivated King Henry VIII so completely he shattered England's bond with Rome to make her queen. For 6 brief years, she stood not merely beside power, but at its heart. But when Anne failed to bear a male heir, enemies pounced. In 1536, she was accused of adultery, incest, and conspiring to kill the king, charges most historians now see as fabricated. Her real crime was political. She threatened the old order, and her fall cleared the path for Jane Seymour. Anne's trial was a pageant of humiliation. In the Tower of London, she faced noblemen who once bowed to her, now sworn to destroy her. No evidence could truly condemn her, but no defense could save her either. In a single stroke of an executioner's sword, her love affair with Henry VIII ended, and a warning echoed across Europe. Even queens could be discarded like pawns. Royal courts thrived on rumor. A whisper in the wrong ear could spiral into disaster. Consider the affair of the diamond necklace in France, decades before the Revolution. Queen Marie Antoinette was falsely implicated in a scheme involving stolen jewels and a conwoman posing as her friend. Though innocent, her reputation never recovered. The public loved the idea of a scheming, extravagant queen, whether or not the charges were true. If queens could be ruined by scandal, mistresses fared far worse. They had no crowns to protect them, no armies to command. A mistress might be celebrated one day and condemned the next, her former lovers eager to distance themselves, her rivals eager to destroy her. Love was never just love. It was always politics. Royal mistresses often met their downfall not through law but through the shifting tides of royal favor. In the court of Spain, Philip Ivy's mistress, Maria Calderon, known as La Calderona, rose from an actress's stage to the king's bed. But when Philip tired of her, Maria was banished to a convent. Many mistresses ended their days in forced seclusion, out of sight, out of history. Even in death, they were not safe from judgment. Some were buried quietly, denied royal mourning, their names scrubbed from court records. The same passion that once elevated them could, in an instant, mark them as traitors. Accusations of treason were rarely about personal betrayal. They were about control. Powerful ministers, jealous queens, and ambitious courtiers knew that to accuse a mistress of plotting against the crown was to strike at the king himself. These women became scapegoats. Their trial spectacles meant to display the state's strength and the monarch's untouchable authority. In medieval chronicles, you'll find chilling details. Noble women paraded through streets in disgrace, forced to wear signs of their alleged sins. Others were imprisoned without trial, locked away in castles or convents until they vanished from memory. Their stories remind us that politics, not passion, drove their punishments. Picture the scene. A great hall filled with lords in velvet and gold, their faces lit by torches. At the center, a woman stands accused. Her crime? Winning a king's heart. She is questioned not about her affections, but about alliances, secret messages, and imagined plots. The verdict is often decided long before the trial begins. These were not trials for justice, they were performances. They reminded the court who held power and who could take it away. And they reminded the women near the throne that every glance, every word, every smile could one day be twisted into evidence of treason. Behind every famous name, Anne Boleyn, Alice Pearce, Agnes Sorrel, there were countless others whose stories never reached the history books. Ladies in waiting dismissed in disgrace. Courtiers' daughters forced into hurried marriages to erase scandal. Mistresses sent to cold convent cells where their beauty no longer mattered. These women lived in a world that celebrated love in poetry but punished it in politics. They were blamed for kings' failings, envied for their influence, and sacrificed to preserve royal power. Their trials remind us that, in the courts of Europe, love was never just a private matter. It was a battlefield. History has a cruel way of remembering women whose power comes not from armies or crowns, but from the private chambers of kings. For every royal mistress who enjoyed jewels and titles, there were others who faced scandal, exile, or even death when politics turned against them. These women often walked a razor's edge. Their influence celebrated one moment and condemned as treason the next. In the Tudor court, few stories are as chilling as that of Anne Boleyn's fall from grace. Once the dazzling mistress who captivated Henry VIII and became his queen, she found herself accused of adultery and incest, charges designed not just to destroy her, but to erase any threat to the king's power. When Henry tired of Anne and sought to replace her with Jane Seymour, the same allure that had raised and to glory was twisted into evidence of seduction, manipulation, and witchcraft. Historians now agree that her trial was a sham, yet it ended with her beheading on Tower Green, a grim reminder that intimacy with a monarch could be a deadly gamble. France, too, had its share of infamous trials. Consider the case of Diane de Poitiers, the beloved mistress of King Henry II. Though never put on trial during his reign, Diane's enemies waited patiently. After Henry's death, the new queen, Catherine de' Medici, forced Diane to surrender her lands and jewels. While Diane escaped imprisonment, her fall from power illustrates how royal mistresses could be publicly humiliated and stripped of wealth when their protectors were gone. The courtroom was only one weapon in the arsenal of vengeance. Confiscation, slander, and exile often served the same purpose. But not all accusations were mere political theater. In 17th century England, Barbara Villiers, mistress of King Charles II, flaunted her influence so openly that she provoked widespread outrage. Her lovers outside the king were well known, yet Charles defended her repeatedly. Parliament, however, debated whether her conduct endangered the crown's reputation. The whispers of treason were less about espionage and more about scandal. Could a monarch still command respect if his mistress ruled his court? These debates, though never ending in a formal trial, showed how female influence could be reframed as a threat to national stability. Sometimes, mistresses truly became pawns in international intrigues. In Renaissance Italy, courts were alive with rumors of women passing state secrets from the bedroom to foreign powers. Even when evidence was thin, the mere accusation could lead to imprisonment or worse. Powerful men used the notion of betrayal through love to justify eliminating rivals and silencing women who knew too much. Love became treason when it crossed invisible political lines. A striking example comes from the reign of Louis XIV of France. His court was a glittering stage, where mistresses like Louise de la Valliere and Madame de Montespan vied for royal favor. But during the infamous affair of the poisons, Montespan was implicated in a conspiracy involving black masses and supposed attempts to poison the king. While she was never formally tried, the scandal nearly destroyed her. The French courts prosecuted astrologers, midwives, and nobles accused of trafficking in poisons and love charms. In the shadows, the line between personal jealousy and high treason blurred. Montespan's fall demonstrated how even a king's beloved could be stained by accusations of dark arts and betrayal. Across Europe, the trials of royal mistresses, or the rumors of trials, served a larger purpose. They reinforced the message that women who strayed beyond their proper role could be crushed without mercy. These proceedings were never just about love affairs. They were warnings to courtiers, rival factions, and sometimes even to queens. The king may indulge a mistress, but no woman is untouchable when power is at stake. The language used against these women was telling. Words like seductress, witch, and traitor framed personal relationships as threats to the realm. Trials became theater, staged for the public to see royal justice in action. The charges often spoke less about real betrayal and more about controlling female ambition, silencing scandal, and protecting dynastic politics. Even when executions were rare, the punishments could be devastating. Public shaming, loss of titles, banishment to convents, and the confiscation of property stripped mistresses of their identities as thoroughly as a scaffold. In some cases, these women were paraded as cautionary examples, symbols of corruption or sin, while the powerful men who once adored them walked away untouched. The irony is impossible to miss. Monarchs were rarely punished for their passions, yet the women who shared their beds were accused of endangering kingdoms. Love became a weapon, wielded by factions eager to topple rivals. Courtrooms turned into stages where whispered jealousies, political calculations, and ancient prejudices all played their part. From Anne Boleyn in England to Madame de Montespan in France, from Italian courts whispering of poison to German duchies punishing disloyal favorites, these stories remind us how deeply fear of female influence ran in the veins of power. Behind every royal scandal lay a warning. In an age when crowns were fragile, intimacy with a king could be as perilous as plotting against him. As the medieval world gave way to the Renaissance and then the Enlightenment, the stage on which these dramas played out changed, but the themes remained hauntingly familiar. Women were still judged not only by what they did, but by how dangerous men imagined they could be. The courtroom, the scaffold, and the whispered accusation of treason were tools for keeping that danger under control. Even now, centuries later, these trials echo as dark chapters in the history of love and power. They remind us that in the courts of kings, desire was never private, and passion was never safe.